Hi everyone, welcome to Organized Intention, where I teach organization and personal finance to help you live with organized intention. Today I wanted to talk to you about our journey to financial wellness. For us, this journey began in 2018 when I discovered Dave Ramsey. For those who don't know, Dave Ramsey is a financial leader who teaches the principle of 7 baby steps toward financial freedom, which I will link in the description box below. So, in 2018, I began absorbing lots of Dave Ramsey information. I watched YouTube videos and even read a couple of books. We started on the baby steps. First of all, I'll describe where we were with our debt when we began. Step 1 is to save $1,000 in a starter emergency fund. We already had that in our savings account. In fact, we had more than that despite having debt. I knew we wouldn't be able to pay off debt with the rest of our savings. At the time, I was in graduate school getting my MBA. So while the plan had been to add on to the student loans that I already had, I realized that we needed to cash flow school so that we wouldn't add to the debt. Well, after 1 year of graduate school, I realized that we didn't have enough to cash flow the tuition for one of the semesters. So I decided to add to the student loan debt. I added $3,500. And luckily, that was all I had to add in student loan debt. But I already had large student loans from my undergraduate degree. I already had over $20,000 in student loans. But I finished my MBA program in October of 2019. My loan payments began in March of 2020 after the 6-month grace period. When I started paying the loans back, I realized that with interest, my loans totaled almost $30,000. Now, onto the car debt back then. When we began the Dave Ramsey plan in 2018, we couldn't pay off a lot of debt because we were paying cash and cash flowing my MBA. However, we did have a car that was purchased in 2015. Unfortunately, we overpaid when we bought the car and we were upside down in our equity. It was an impulse purchase. I was trying to keep up with the Joneses. It was not a smart decision. But hindsight's 2020. We didn't do enough research into what we were buying. The SUV that we purchased was a 2009, and when it was purchased in 2016, we financed it for 72 months. That was a bad decision. 6 years paying on a car that was already 6 years old. Definitely not smart. We didn't get a Carfax. We didn't check around. Nothing. So by 2018, this car was starting to have electrical system issues. Big issues. Lights would come on at random times. The hatch on the back didn't open. The power steering was almost non-existent. The car was unsafe. But we're still making a stupid payment on it. So I continued to drive the thing, but I had the idea that we needed to pay the car off as fast as we could because I knew it wouldn't last much longer. Now, we did get the car checked out. The electrical system problem was a $2,000 part that would have to be fixed at the dealership in a town an hour away. The $2,000 did not include labor costs. So when we had any money to spare, we paid down on the car. Luckily, we paid it off at the beginning of 2020. Now, our home debt in 2018 actually began when we purchased our home in September of 2016. We bought more house than we can afford. We didn't do proper research before buying. This was pre-Dave Ramsey, so we didn't follow any guidelines about saving for down payments or how much you can really afford every month. We took out a $173,000 mortgage for 30 years. We put $0 down. Now, Dave Ramsey advises a 15-year mortgage. We did have our payment fall within the 25% of your take-home pay guidelines per month, but it was a 30-year mortgage. The problem ended up being that we were house poor, and myself and my husband were unwilling to make significant changes to our incomes. With a heavy debt load already, we weren't comfortable making the large house payment for the next 30 years. So we decided to sell the house. Luckily, it only took 3 months in a market that has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. The downside is that we had to come up with a significant payment out of pocket in order to make the sale happen by covering the closing costs. We had to pay almost $5,000 to sell the house, but it was worth it for us to no longer have the monthly payment. We knew in advance that we would be coming out of pocket, So we had been saving since the house was put on the market, and the stimulus check went directly to this fund. We just sold it this month. Now I'll talk about our current debt. We are paying those student loans back. They are all with one service provider, but there are 5 different groups of loans depending on which times and what dates I took the loans out. All of those groups have different interest rates: 6.6%, 6%, 4.6%, to 4.29%, and 3.4%. The minimum monthly payment is just over $315. This is the debt that we're focused on paying right now. Our goal is to pay off all the student loans in 18 months. Since our current balance is $27,986.15, our monthly payments have to average just over $1,550 a month to pay this down. With that being said, we are not following the typical snowball method. Our car has a smaller outstanding balance than the student loans, but the minimum monthly payment is significantly smaller on the car. Also, we know that at some point we're going to need to replace my husband's vehicle sooner rather than later and may have to finance another car. I know that this goes against the Dave Ramsey principle of never having debt, but we are not necessarily following the program in its strictest sense. I am not anti-debt. I am not opposed to debt when it's done correctly and for the right reason. I think exploring all options before financing is wise, but financing may be a wiser choice depending on your circumstances. The car is another story. Remember how I told you we had paid our car off? Well, we had no choice but to get another car. Ours needed more repairs than we could afford or were willing to pay for. We hadn't had time to save up cash for another car, so we financed another one. I know, this goes against every debt principle out there, but we did what we had to do at the time. We did research some cheaper cars, but we just didn't find anything that ran for the right amount of cash we had on hand. We live in a small town. It was slim pickings. This time we made a smarter decision, though, about buying. We purchased a GMC. There's a dealership in our town. It's easier to have work done on the vehicle without having to drive an hour away as we did with the previous car. Also, we did lots of research before buying. We checked prices locally and within driving distance. We visited several dealerships. We got a Carfax. We looked at consumer reports for potential problems with this particular make and model. We got a really good price on our trade-in. It didn't hurt that we were buying during the COVID-19 pandemic when a lot of dealerships were struggling to sell anything. As far as the financing for the car, we got a good rate that matched our credit union's rate. We knew that our credit scores were good before we went in. We tried to keep the financed amount at 5 years or less. With a finance amount of $12,000 or less, we were able to do that. In fact, the first price given to us on the car we ended up buying was not within those guidelines, so we turned around and left the dealership. But they called us back later and accepted our terms. We financed a small SUV that was 3 years old with 30,000 miles for $12,000, which we thought was a pretty good deal. We do plan to pay this off before the 5 years is up, and you'll see this in the debt payoff plan that I'm showing you on the screen. In terms of our house now, the mortgage payment is no longer an issue, and we just wrapped up all the utilities and insurance associated with the house as of today. If you don't already know and are wondering where we live, we moved in with my mother. My father passed away in 2003, and my mother lived in our childhood home alone. Luckily, it's a large house. She had 3 extra bedrooms and a bonus room to accommodate our family of 4, which is myself, my husband, and my 2 sons. We are grateful that she has opened up her home to us. I know that it's not an option for everyone, and believe me, we know how blessed we are. We would love to have our own space, but the timing is not just right yet. We would love to be able to own a home in the future, and we plan to do that. However, we will definitely do more research before we do that. We'll save up for a down payment, and we'll only finance it for 15 years. We'll make sure our finances are in order before we purchase anything. In looking at our debt payoff, where do we go from here? You guys are seeing our debt payoff plan. This includes the estimated payoff dates. We are looking to pay approximately $1,550 per month in this plan, as I mentioned earlier. Some months may be more, some months less. Of course, nobody counts on having their plans derailed, but we want to follow the plan to the best of our ability and continue to live frugally so that we can achieve our dreams and fulfill all of these goals. I just want to let you guys know this is our debt payoff sheet that I go through every month. And you can see here, I actually have this as an insert in my Happy Planner. I just have a Happy Planner hole punch, and I use that to hole punch the paper and put it in my planner so that I can have access to it every month and keep track of it. So the first thing I have is I've listed all of those debts that I mentioned earlier in order of interest rate from largest to smallest. That is not how we plan to pay it off. As I mentioned previously, we will pay off all of the student loans first. I just listed them in order of interest rate just to keep them in my head a little bit better. So you can see there I have the balance of each one listed and the minimum payment. That's the minimum payment every month, and then the estimated payoff date. We plan to pay off this largest interest rate first. We plan to pay this off by August. And then you can see that we will move on next to this group E, paying that one off next. Then group B, C, and A accordingly. Lastly, we will tackle the Wells Fargo. But I just wanted to mention here that these estimated payoff dates are, of course, estimates. And it doesn't factor in necessarily the minimum payments that will be coming off of these accounts. But I just did a best guesstimate of where we will be in the next 2 years, which is what I'm approximating for the actual payoff estimate of 2 years. You can see here that our total balance was $39,803.60 with a minimum payment of $541.82 every month. And that includes both our student loans and our car. Now, of course, these minimum payments will change, I assume, as we pay off each of these loans, especially now that there is no interest accruing right now on those student loans, which is why I've made the plan to hopefully pay off this largest interest rate one first before the interest kicks back in. We have no interest right now until through September. So hopefully we can get all of that taken care of. The whole purpose of sharing all of this information with you guys is to help you make wise financial choices and for you to help hold us accountable on our debt-free journey. There will be updates on the plan every month in the budget videos, so make sure you subscribe for future updates. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and comment below if you have any questions, or comment if there's a certain topic you want to see a video on. Thanks for watching.